Good morning, everyone. I see we've got a few folks coming in, but just to keep things on time, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the March Legislative Coffee for Shelby County. For those of you who may have not attended one of our legislative coffees before, I'll give you a quick rundown of the format. What we will do is we'll open up and we'll hear from all of our representatives. They'll talk about bills they've been working on and things that are going on in the legislature. And then when they're done with their update, we'll open it to the floor for questions. Be patient with us because we try to pass this mic around. So we'll try to run them to you as quickly as we can. And with that, I'll turn it over to Representative Holt and we'll get started.
Can you hear me? Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here today. Talk about some of the legislation. We're in the week that was after the funnel week, the first funnel, which is self-imposed deadlines. Anything that doesn't get through committee before the first funnel is dead for the year, so it keeps us on track. And then there's a second funnel in a few weeks, and everything that comes over from the Senate, everything that we send over to the Senate, if it doesn't get through the committee by that funnel, then it's dead for the year. So a few bills that I will talk about very quickly. We did a number of bills related to adoption this week to try to make it easier for families who are adopting. House File 248 requires employees who have adopted a child 6 years old or 6 years old treated the same way as if they would have a biological child in regards to parental leave policies. So we think that's really good for adoptive families. House File 314 allows the court to waive a home study requirement in an adoption case if the person applying is the current legal guardian, has been a legal guardian for the preceding 3 years, and there have been no issues. This will also expedite things, we think, in the same way. Adoption and home study can cost anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 for these families. So we think that's a good piece of policy as well. House File 367 says that a child in need of assistance preceding the family interaction can continue unless it poses harm to the child, because again, we think that family interaction is of extreme importance. Regarding health care access in Iowa, we passed several pieces of legislation this year. Iowa, like every other state, is having some shortages in health care professionals. So House File 516 passed. The other things I would mention is eminent domain in the House. We continue to pass a number of eminent domain legislation. This week we passed off the floor, moving the Office of Consumer Advocate back to being independent and out of the Attorney General's office, because we think that is important. We passed legislation to require the Summit Carbon Solutions to have a certain level of insurance, because what we're hearing is landowners can't even get insurance because of the eminent domain issues. County supervisors are concerned about what's going to happen liability-wise when there's a leak or an accident. And so we think that's a really good piece of legislation. There are a number of others. We passed 7 bills, I think, related to eminent domain out of Judiciary Committee. One of the others I would mention would be allowing for expedited judgment. We passed that also in the last session. But what this would do is if there's any question as to the constitutionality of an eminent domain request, such as is going on right now with Summit, because it doesn't meet the definition of public use in the Iowa Constitution, this will allow upfront for a landowner to be able to challenge the constitutionality of an eminent domain granted by the Iowa Utilities Commission, and it would allow upfront a court to make a decision on the constitutionality of it, rather than landowners having to be, go through years and years of fighting it out in the courts. So we think this is also an awesome protection for landowners. Given what happened in South Dakota just recently, where South Dakota passed legislation signing the law that said you're not going to use eminent domain for the CO2 pipeline. It is really questionable where they go from here. Summit, but I don't think they've given up, and so we're going to continue to do everything we can in Iowa to protect landowners. So with that, I'm going to go over to Representative Williams. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a big crowd here everything. This is fantastic to see everyone. And I'm echoing a lot, so my apologies there. Representative Bolton hit on a couple of things I wanted to hit on, but so I won't spend too much time on them, but I was fortunate enough, Representative Holt gave me the ability to run that child and youth assistance bill on the floor. And that's a great bill, and I hope we get it through the Senate. I think we probably will. I read another one as well that's somewhat related regarding troubled youth in apartment living. So sometimes you get a kid who's under 18 who's been in trouble, maybe he's a substance abuse issue or something, and they get put into a home for a while, and then they have no place to go. They're too young to be put out of the streets, and they're not wanted at home, or some other issues at home. And so what we did was we passed a bill that would allow the judge one more tool, and that tool is to put them in supervised apartment living, where they're sort of on their own, but they're supervised by adults at the same time. So I don't think it's going to impact an awful lot of kids, but it might be half a dozen or a dozen kids a year that fall into this thing. But very happy we passed that. Hopefully we can get that through on the Senate side as well. Another thing that I ran the other day, and this was at a subcommittee, it's too late to make it into law this year, but we started the conversation on sludge that comes from water treatment plants that get put onto farm fields. And what we're finding is that some of that sludge is coming out with a lot of what they call forever chemicals, you know. And most of you know that the technical name is too hard for me to pronounce, the PFOS, the PFAS, people call them. Most of it's known as Teflon, right? So the Teflon we used to use in our hands all the time, we thought nothing of it, the stuff never goes away. And we're finding it in the sludge, and then we put it out into a farm field. We used to have this very good synergistic relationship where the stuff that comes out of those water treatment plants that goes on the farm fields is good for both parties. And now we're finding out there may be some issues with that. So we're going to start that conversation, and hopefully we can get that into the environmental protection next year. By my count, 362 bills made it through the funnel on the House side. That's a lot of bills, way too many. We've been through 72 of those so far. 10 of them got held back. That may never see the light of day again, but some of them just got held back for some updates and some changes, and we'll come back to the floor again. Let's see what else. I think that's all I'm going to talk about here right now, other than to let everybody know that we have another thing that we need to be to at 11:30, so if we run out of here quickly after this, it's not because we're running away from anybody. We really like to spend time talking to you, but we have another thing at 11:30. So hand it over to Senator Schultz.
Good morning, everybody. Biggest crowd I've ever seen here, so thank you for coming in. Other than policy, they did a nice job talking about some of the type of bills that we're dealing with in the legislature. I wanted to talk financial or fiscal situation. So this week, the Revenue Estimating Conference and they meet quarterly. It's a group of 3 experts appointed to cover all different interests. And they meet quarterly to give us a projection on upcoming revenues. That's how those are the numbers we use to build the budget. And just to give us a sense of what's going on in the Iowa economy. I wanted to bring this up because if it's been in the news that we have declining revenues, I'd like to explain why. It's actually a good reason. So I'll do a little bit of reading here because I don't want to mess up the numbers. So RAC met 2 days ago. The projected revenue for the fiscal year that we're in right now, fiscal year 25, is $9.1 billion. That's a decrease from 3 months ago of $19 million. Of note, more importantly, it's a decrease of $621 million from a year ago. So over a quarter it was $19 million, but year over year it's $600 million. That doesn't mean the economy is shrinking. It means the tax cuts are working. When you cut taxes, you take less revenue out. So the message that I'd like to leave everybody with is that money didn't disappear due to a shrinking economy. It's still in the hands of Iowans, which was the point of tax cuts. We have, let's see here, fiscal year 26, projected revenue is $8.5 billion, and that's a decrease of $217 million from the December estimate of $8.7. That would be another case of the tax cuts are implementing, that people are paying less taxes, the money is still out in the economy, which is where we want it. The expenditure limit, which means a full accounting of every penny we have minus 1% is actually $10.5 billion, meaning we have the money to cover all of the bills. And this was all part of the plan when we built the tax cuts into place. We set aside that money. It's in the cash reserve or the checking account. It's in our emergency funds, which the law requires we keep maintained at 10% of the general fund budget. And it's also, the majority of it is in the taxpayer relief fund, where we put it for the express purpose of filling in the budget as the tax cuts took place, money was left in the economy, and we needed to make sure that all services and public needs were covered. So in REC, they dropped $217 million. That still leaves us with a $2 billion carryover. And the point we have here, the biggest impact to the net receipts is the full implementation. We are now at the 3.8% flat tax, which puts us in the top 10 of competitive states for business. My first concern is the businesses who are already here, leaving the money in their pocket, but we also like to attract jobs and employers and to retain that wealth when retirement happens. That's why we eliminated retirement income tax. So the program is working. All of this was planned for. The reduced receipts are not a shrinking economy. It's money left in your hands. So I just wanted to leave that there. Of note also, Iowa's doing better in the labor market than the national average. We're at 3.2% unemployment and a 66.4% labor participation rate. And this isn't numbers and math, but in my mind, over the next 3 years, I expect the Iowa economy to take off again, as it did the first Trump administration. He knows how to rev up the American economy, and Iowa seems to benefit even more than the national average. So I'm looking forward to another Trump administration. With that, we can get to questions.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, for the update. Like I said, we will open the floor to questions. We do have a large crowd and we do have a time limit. So let's be conscientious when we're asking our questions. Don't get into a discussion. Just asking questions. And make sure we give plenty of time for everybody who has a question to ask a question. So with that, I've got a couple of hands up here in front, and then as you have a question, just raise your hand between Carol and I. We'll get you the microphone.
I do have a question. When you talk about gender identity, I think a couple weeks ago you were talking about raising the question to me about adoption. Do a lot of people allow adoption that worry about just gender identity? You can't have a show that you agree with gender identity. But anything has changed, you haven't heard about that.
So if I understood you correctly, there was an issue where I believe the Iowa Department of Human Services, the foster program, was saying we will not place children with you in the house unless you agree with the woke gender ideology movement. Is that correct?
Right.
I don't know of a bill happening there. However, the culture is changing within Iowa government, and we've had a trifecta for many years, but I think items like that are identified and then they are fixed. So I also had heard that was an informal, unwritten policy, but I am thinking that is being addressed, and I'm sure reprimands are going out, but we will look into it again.
Okay, I do have one more question. Just, have my number at the back. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Harlan. Thank you so much for being here. It's really important for you guys to listen to your employers. I'm sure you heard about the cancellation of federal funds to the local food for schools program, as well as the local foods purchasing agreement, which was getting local food into food banks across the state of Iowa. And so that announcement of defunding those programs came on Monday, which is very upsetting for small and regional producers food hubs. We have a food hub here in Iowa, or here in Harlan. We have the largest food hub in the state of Iowa here in Harlan, so right there. We used to be in this building. And there's 163 schools across the state of Iowa who are purchasing local food. So the Choose Iowa program, it's great, it's a great program. But we need to match the dollars that was promised last fall to farmers across the state of Iowa. This is devastating. We know that $1 for this program that was put back into, $1 that was spent on this program, which is a very small amount of dollars when you consider how much money it's going to subsidize our food system and subsidize large food processors and not actual food, right? We know that the $11 million that was promised to the state of Iowa, $4 go back into our local economy. And so I'm empowering you to do good and do good bills that take care of the little guy in our state. Not just for just this program, but for all the people across the state of Iowa. I want to be proud that you are my representative. And I really want to just empower you to take care of everybody. Not just if you agree with them or not. Everybody. If their gender is different than yours, if their race, their color, their religious views, the way that they vote, I want to empower you to take care of everybody. This is a country and a state that is for everybody. And so one way to be taking care of those little farmers, I would, again, encourage you to do that. And I would like to know your views. I guess my question is on if there is discussion. I mean, we did talk to Secretary May earlier this week, and he said that they're hoping that maybe some funding could come down from the state to put the $3 million back that were promised this year. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm vaguely familiar with what you're talking about, and things are happening at a very rapid pace at a federal level, and so we're all playing catch up all the time on this as well. So I heard about the issue. I don't know that we have an answer to the issue. I can tell you that with the rapid pace that's going on at the federal level, things are getting broken inadvertently. One thing I do like about what they're doing is when they see that they've broken something inadvertently, they've recognized that and have done some things to fix what they've broken inadvertently. I don't know if this is one of them or not. So we're going to keep an eye on that, but I don't have a magical answer for you on being able to fix the food bank issues and what the federal level. We don't have any say in what goes on the federal level.
Yes, so you have a say on using a line item for a small program that
Right.
would really empower and make a lot of return on investment. We don't see, there's not a lot of programs and policies in place that have such a significant impact into our local economy,
Right.
more than these programs.
Good. Okay.
Just thank you for bringing it up. I'll definitely start talking to Mike Sessions, our chairman of our ag committee. I'll definitely start talking to him and the individual who represents the ag idols. I'll definitely have a conversation with him on Monday. Thank you for bringing this to us. Yeah.
Thank you for being here today. My name is David. I live in Boca. I'm a farmer. Help me understand your values that allows you to take civil rights away from people who were granted those civil rights. Can we please be done with this stupid word woke? It sucks.
Amen.
It's all for rights. And you have to decide who is granted civil rights and who is not. Even though you did you choose to be straight? Tell me when you chose to be straight. You didn't. Trans people didn't choose to be trans. You didn't choose to be bald. Do I get to discriminate? Okay, well, we don't get to discriminate for who you are. Trans people are who they are. Straight people are who they are. And your fear and lack of understanding is very sad.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your perspective. Everybody has a right to their perspective now. Let me give you mine, okay? In Iowa, and I allowed you to speak, I don't expect to be interrupted, okay? In 2007, Democrat trifecta put gender identity as a protected class in the Iowa Civil Rights Code. The Iowa Civil Rights Code normally reserved for immutable characteristics such as race. The impact of doing that elevated the rights of transgender individuals above the rights of other Iowans. And as a result of have things like biological males that have decided to identify as female, going into women's sports, taking away their opportunities, injuring them. It's unbelievable. You can go right now and Google a video from Massachusetts that happened just a week or so ago, in which a biological male decided to be a female and was playing in a female basketball game, okay? They had to stop the game within minutes because he injured 3 female players. He looks like a giant playing these female players. The video shows him throw one girl to the ground. She can't get her to the floor. She can't get up because she's injured so badly. This happened 3 times before they stopped the game. We're not having it in Iowa. You've got Peyton. You've got Peyton McNabb, who is a volleyball player, I believe, in North Carolina. If my memory serves me correctly, she's playing a volleyball game. There's a transgender player on the other side, biological male identifying as female, spikes the ball so hard, hits Peyton in the head, knocks her out, knocks her unconscious. When she wakes up, she has permanent brain damage and has difficulty walking to this day. All of her dreams, all of her opportunities for athletic scholarships destroyed. We're not having that in the state of Iowa. So the removing of gender identity from the Civil Rights Code does not take any rights away from transgender individuals. It simply stops the elevation of their rights above others that enable them to invade women's bathrooms, women's locker rooms, and women's sports. And they have the same rights as everyone sitting in here. You know, the left loves to talk about white privilege, and especially white guys having white privilege. Well, now transgender individuals have exactly the same rights as white guys that have white privilege. They have the same rights. They're protected by the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Iowa Constitution. What we did was say, no more are we going to allow this alternate version of reality that allows men to play in women's sports, because the reality is we have returned to the only fair way to do it, which is to base it on biological reality at birth. That is what we've done. That restored equal rights. It did not take them away.
I would just add one thing to that, and that is, we found some years ago was that prisoners were being allowed to do sex change operations and other hormone changes, Medicaid, and they were on Medicaid. And so the state of Iowa, the taxpayers of Iowa, were paying for those transgender operations and et cetera. Now, my understanding is it only cost us about $2 million through 2022, but those numbers were escalating fast, so we don't have numbers for 23 or 24. So the legislature, I think in 2019, I want to say, passed a law that said we're not paying for those kind of things. And then it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, it's in your Civil Rights Code, you've got to pay for those things. And so it left us really with no choice but to take it back out of the Civil Rights Code, not to impede their rights to be who they are, but to keep the men out of women's sports, to keep the men out of women's showers, and to prevent taxpayers from having to pay for those operations.
I want to throw in, these folks covered it already. In the Senate, there's actually a senator whose daughter had to spend the entire basketball season wearing a swimsuit underneath her clothes all day in school, because when they went to the locker room for basketball practice, a boy claimed to be a girl that walked in and wanted to take showers with them and change clothes in front of them. So they left a swimsuit on for the entire day till they got home again. I'm ashamed of the school administrators who didn't protect those adolescent girls. It was disgusting, and I expect better from professionals in the education industry. Now, another example that came up, this wasn't in Iowa, I literally just saw this 2 days ago on X, a news article, that there was a school on the East Coast. I didn't want to scroll in front of you on my phone here looking for it quick, but there was a school in an East Coast state where a boy walked into the locker room and demanded that everybody change clothes with him in there, and he was changing his clothes. And when the young women went to the administration, the 3 top administrators in the school were liberal women, and actually went into the locker room to try to force the girls to undress in front of a boy dressed as a girl. We have a cultural problem, and I don't mind, and I respect the fact that some people don't like the word woke, but it so accurately encapsulates the broken culture and failed policies of the left that would try to force teenage girls to undress in front of a boy. I can't fathom that. I'll leave it at that.
I'll mention one more real-world incident that happened in Des Moines. It was brought to us a year or 2 ago. There was a young woman at Des Moines Area Community College, culinary arts student. They get kind of messy when they're cooking, so they have showers and changing facilities. She goes in after a cooking class to be confronted by a middle-aged, full biological male, fully intact, naked in her locker room. She went to the administration, and the administration said, "You're the problem. There's nothing we can do about it because gender identity is a protected class in the Iowa Civil Rights Code, and he has a right to be there." This young woman left that school and went to another school. You can't make this stuff up, folks. So, everybody wants to respect the rights of transgender individuals, but that does not include them violating the private spaces of women and their sports that it's amazing to me that some of the very people who fought for women's rights, who fought for Title IX, who fought for women's sports are now perfectly okay with men violating these spaces. It's unbelievable, but again, that's why we took action, and we will continue to take action to stand up for fairness, decency, and truth.
Is this up and running?
Yeah.
Different topic. Some time back, Iowa voters asked the legislature to fund I think it was called the Conservation and Preservation Trust through a sales tax increase. I think it was 3/8% in funds to go to that. Any idea when that might be addressed? I don't think it is this time around, but again, it's on the radar.
It's always on the radar. So what he's talking about is 2010, Iowans voted for a constitutional amendment, and it's referred to as I will. In the next 1 cent sales tax increase, 3/8% of that is supposed to be reserved for recreation, parks, trails, water, cleanup, and a few other things. It has not passed since then. So the only way to get that 3/8% is to pass a 1 cent sales tax increase, which is not something that a lot of legislators like to do, is pass sales tax increases. So is that going to pass anytime soon? I doubt it. Now, in the meantime, since 2010, I know we spent about $400 million, I think, on water cleanup and other things. It's not like we're not doing some of those things that the Iowa is supposed to cover, but it's quite an interesting thing. I think a number of people really want to see that pass for more recreation in Iowa, and a lot of people don't want to see it pass because they're afraid of the amount of money that goes to the DNR and what they can do with that. It's about 1 cent, or that 3/8% on the next 1 cent sales tax increase is about $250 to $280 million a year. And what can they do with that? One of the things they can do with that is buy a lot of farmland properties and hunting ground and other things. So people don't want to see the state buying up all that land. So I think that's where it stands at the moment. I know that there was a Senate resolution on that 3/8% instead of having it go to the I will, to turn around and put that in as property tax relief. And I believe that died in the Senate. It hasn't gone anywhere. So that's what I know about at this point. Go ahead.
Just to follow up, the surface application slide which one of you referenced earlier, that doesn't apply to commercial or industrial as I understand it. Sometime back, we have a local industry that surface supplies on the east side of town here, and I talked to the DNR about that, and that person told me that they really have no teeth to enforce how much they can apply per acre or what they can apply per acre. So
That's interesting. I was not aware of that at
I
all.
want to check that when you do your water quality bills to make sure that it applies to industrial as well as just farmers.
Absolutely. So what I said earlier, and I don't want to change the subject too much here, but on that sludge thing, is that farmers typically will allow the local water treatment plants to do that because it's good for both of them. But if you start telling them, hey, they've actually tested fentanyl, acid, like 2,600 other dangerous items that are going into the ground, some of which may be there forever. you didn't ask the farmer if it's okay to do that. You asked him if it's okay to apply fertilizer. So we're learning as we go here, and there's a lot of things that we just didn't know last year that we know now. So thanks for bringing that up again, and I'll keep my eye on that for when we do talk about that moving forward. You want to add something? You? Okay, that's it.
We have a question back here.
Good question.
Hi, my name is Daniel. I'm a farmer just outside of town here. I have a question about the pesticide immunity bill that made it through the funnel. This bill would shield pesticide companies from lawsuits against their products. I strongly believe that companies like Bayer should have to defend themselves just like any other company and not get a free pass. And I know the arguments, there's been a couple arguments. One is that it should just follow the label, but the glyphosate, there's been several studies that show that it is cancer, a carcinogen. And there's been some that have disputed that, but the fact that it has since been completely disputed should mean that the pesticide companies should have the burden of defending themselves. I'd like to, this affected my family personally. My sister-in-law passed away from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Several of those studies have shown that glyphosate is linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And during her time in the Peace Corps, she was around unregulated use of glyphosate. And so it's highly likely that that was the cause. And I realize that would not affect this lawsuit issue, but I feel like this isn't just litigation for the purpose of litigation. It is a real and serious issue.
I'll go ahead and start, and what I have to say may be unpopular, so I'm just going to be transparent and give you everything I've got. The Senate has a bill that says that you cannot sue a chemical company for failure to warn, and that is because that is the one lawsuit that Bayer lost in California. My understanding is that in California they went looking for a judge who would be amenable to this. And essentially they said, well, you didn't warn us that this could cause cancer. The bill itself does not stop anybody from suing if there are damages that can be proven. What it does say is that you cannot sue for failure to warn if the company is following federal law and is putting the label on the package that the federal government requires. If there's more than that, I'm open to listening because I try not to get it on me. I don't see how any synthetic anything, I mean anything from coffee creamer is a synthetic chemical. I try not to get any of that on me because I think all of it has unknown issues. But I do understand, I've heard of one study that does say there is a link to cancer. I understand there's more studies that show there's no link to cancer. I have no faith in the federal government doing studies whatsoever, so I don't trust any of them. I have gone at length, great length, to make sure that if somebody has provable damage, you can always file suit, but that this bill would have nothing to do with receiving compensation if you've been damaged. But it can't be because the federal government requires this is the only label you can put on your package. You cannot add to it, and you cannot take away from it. I have no faith in the federal government, but they have to follow the federal law because they distribute the chemical among all the states. The other thing we've talked about, what we consider moving forward, is this is the last American producer of glyphosate. The alternatives are cheap Chinese knockoffs who don't have a clue what's in there. I don't know if it's worse, I don't know if it's the same thing, to be quite honest. But the bill that's moving in the Senate just simply says you can't sue for the label that they have no choice to put on there. And I'm open to feedback. That's not a hard and fast position.
This is an issue, I think the world is going to show us, obviously we agree on 99% of everything. This is an issue that's very difficult for me. I think there is between a rock and a hard place, but I do not support allowing them that immunity from lawsuit. I don't support it. I would remove immunity. I don't think pharmaceutical companies should have immunity from being sued if their vaccine causes people harm, but they do. And I loved President Reagan, but that was passed during his administration, and I think that was a mistake. I don't think there should be immunity like that. But they are between a rock and a hard place. It is a very, very difficult issue, which is why Republicans are on both sides of the issue. It's a very, very difficult one, but just in general, I don't support giving people immunity from being sued if their product causes harm. So I would be a no with that legislation.
Well, let me write the fence since I'm in the middle. Glyphosate's been around for an awful long time. It's not just a Bayer product. It's a generic now, so it's manufactured by a multitude of companies. A lot of it comes from China. A lot of the problems that I see with glyphosate isn't the chemical itself, but it's the surfactants that they use. And surfactant is something that makes it stick to the plant and whatever. So surfactants quite often are a problem. I agree that they should not be off the hook. I also agree that they shouldn't be on the hook if they did everything that they said that they were told that they should do and everything that they could do. Somewhere in the middle, I think, lies or an answer to this problem. But I don't think we found it yet. So that's where I'm at.
I would just like to address this comment about the cancer, and I think the legislation needs to look at why we're having such a high rate of cancer in the state of Florida. I was at the Capitol and talked to someone in the House of Representatives and was told that the reason the cancer rate in Iowa is so high is because we have so many old people in the state. And the older we get, the more apt we are to get cancer. So I think something needs to be done, and I want to thank you on the issue of eminent domain. It would be great if Iowa could pass a law like South Dakota did. And along with that, I worry about our administration's drill, baby, drill. What is that going to do to protect the mineral rights of Iowans, to protect our natural resources so that they can't just come in, take our land by eminent domain, drill for whatever minerals they want to find, dig up our parks. So I'm asking what you are going to do to help us protect our valuable farmland and our resources.
Thank you. The first issue, just on the eminent domain issue, is I love what South Dakota did. I don't think we need to do it because it's already in our Constitution. The Iowa Constitution says that eminent domain can only be granted for public use projects. It is clearly not a public use project, and that is why I am one of 30 legislators called legislative interveners, 30 Republican legislators sued. We have a lawsuit going through federal court and state court right now. We sued the Iowa Utilities Commission because we don't believe they had the authority to grant an eminent domain for this pipeline because it's a private economic development project. Our Constitution says public use. Our code goes further to say it must be convenient and necessary for the citizens of Iowa. It is neither convenient nor is it necessary. And so that's why we sued, and that's why we're going through the courts. I would love to be able to do more. We've passed numerous bills out of the House, unfortunately, and Senator Schultz is where we are, but they haven't been able to take them up, and they haven't gotten them across the finish line in the Senate. That's unfortunate. There's also going to be continued, we're looking into the Iowa Utility Commission's conduct, the way they treated landowners, the fact that they're not showing up for informational meetings. That's another bill we advanced, mandating that at least one commissioner has to be at informational meetings and listen to the landowners that they're supposed to be listening to because they're not even there listening to them. It's disgusting. I'm not going to in any way, shape, form, or fashion defend the Iowa Utilities Commission. They've changed the rules. When it came to this particular issue with Summit, they've changed the rules. I think they've conducted themselves in a horrific manner, and that's why I'm hoping that the House Oversight Committee, of which I'm a member, will bring them in front of us and ask them a lot of hard questions. And so there's a lot of things going on, but I wish we could pass the bill that South Dakota passed. I don't think we need it because of what's Constitution. And I would love to be able to get that to the governor's office. But we, like I said, we've got 7 bills moving to try to protect landowners on that issue. On the issue of mineral rights, I don't know, I've talked about some of somebody else. The mineral rights, you mentioned about jewelry,
Yeah, so what he said, I'm an intervener as well. I was against the CO2 pipeline from day one. When I was in the Senate, I didn't run it, I was on the subcommittee, the first subcommittee that opposed the pipeline, and we advanced it forward, and it didn't get any further than that. So I'm one of the 30 interveners that Representative Holt just talked about. I think we're on the wrong side of this issue, and we need to be on the right side of property owners. I understand what it means to the ethanol industry and the plants and stuff. I think there's a better way, and we just have not looked at the better way. I can tell you what a better way is, but when I did that in Carroll a few weeks ago, I was told I was giving too much of a geology lesson, so I won't do that again. Anyway, on the other mineral rights and stuff, yeah, we'd be totally opposed to people just coming in and destroying our parks and our land and our personal property to go drilling for things. I don't know what else we can say about that. I don't think the drill baby drill really means to just go wherever you want to and dig up oil.
About all I have to add is I have failed to get the Senate to take up any of the bills before. There were policy reasons among my Republican Senate colleagues. The collection of bills coming from the Senate is getting treated and talked about differently. The bills coming from the House, coming over to the Senate, are being talked about differently. I am hoping that I can get some of those individual bills, if they're not packaged as a larger bill, hoping I can get some of those through. The insurance for landowners, spoken about positively and does not seem to be a problem. The South Dakota legislature and governor seem to have broken something through. They do have a difference that they did not have a permit approved already in the state. We do, so there is a difference in the conversations you're talking about. But I guess I'm optimistic at the moment as bills come over.
I'm optimistic our Supreme Court will do the right thing. And if not, then the U.S. Supreme Court will do the right thing.
It was a Supreme Court decision, U.S. some years ago, called Kelo versus New London, that really watered down and devastated property rights. I would love to see this Iowa case get before the U.S. Supreme Court and have us restore public use instead of public benefit, because there's a major difference between the two. So that's also a possibility in what we're trying to do. That's why we filed with the federal and state court.
So I have a question that goes back to the pesticide bill. Just a couple of points in that is that whenever we take away liability, we never get safer products. We've seen that with vaccines, we just get more products that are partially safety tested. We don't need that here in Iowa. And I think Iowans need to be covered for these pharmaceutical companies or pesticide companies in that respect. And if these products are safe, the lawsuits will not impact the product. And they continue to be made by the companies. I know we've got concern about the comes from China, what's in it. But then maybe we need to have some kind of requirement of finding out what is in it before we allow it to use. But we need to first and foremost protect our citizens. When it comes to the issue of the labeling, it's not an Iowa issue, it's the EPA issue like you mentioned. And I think that given the change in our administration, that these pesticide companies need to go back and talk to our administration about being allowed to get those EPA regulations opened up and change that level, and let Iowans protect Iowans, let our state protect us as we feel we need to do, and not let it be governed by the EPA regulations that are lacking. And so I think that we need to put a hold on this bill until we get more information from how we can change at the federal level, which is where it seems to need to be changed at, because I don't think that removing liability from a company is going to be beneficial. We've seen that with the vaccines. But I'm not talking for or against, I'm just saying the safety effects. The safety testing that's been done has been proven that they're not doing it. They were given immunity in '86, and they haven't had a single study since then on the vaccine schedule. Not one. RFK Jr. took them to court in 2017, 2018, and it was proven. Every 2 years they're supposed to do those tests. They have not. So that precedence has been set. We know these companies are all kind of the same. We can't trust them. We have to do what we can to protect Iowans, and I think that we need to stop moving that bill forward because of that. So that's all I have to say.
On
I'm Sherry Webb, and I'm an affected landowner, as you all know, because this is the 4th year we've been coming here. So, this past week, literally this week, Tuesday through Thursday, over 100 people went to Washington, D.C., 11 of them from Iowa and other states surrounding the area, and talked with various congressmen and women and PHMSA and several other groups that were there, departments that were there. And all of a sudden, because South Dakota passed the bill after a lot of work from a very organized group up there, and the governor signed it, all of a sudden there are rumors of federal eminent domain. How is Iowa going to stop that, or is there any way to stop that? Because that is very worrisome. The fact that you guys actually have something in the works this year, and I'm begging you, literally I'll get on my knees and beg you to do something this year, because this is the 4th year. We need some protection against this. Iowans have the right to own property, just like everybody else in this country. And our rights are being eroded left and right, and I don't think it's right. Thank you.
Thank you. We've heard those discussions about federal and eminent domain, or people talking about, we haven't seen anything official, we haven't seen anything like that. I would be frankly shocked if something like that comes out. I just don't think it's going to happen. It's interesting to see in the Trump administration, you've got Kennedy, who has done videos and adamantly opposed to the pipeline, but you've also got Oregon, who supports the pipeline. But, we don't know anything as far as federal eminent domain. It's just been sort of the rumor mill. I will say in South Dakota, when their politicians didn't listen, their elected officials didn't listen, was 11 of them that were beaten in primaries, and that is why all of a sudden you have a bill that goes to the governor's desk and is signed because the people spoke loud and clear in the South Dakota, and I couldn't be more proud of them. I think a similar comeuppance can happen in the state of Iowa, and I have tried to warn my fellow Republicans that people mean business when it comes to this issue, because it's a fundamental right, as George Washington said. Freedom and property rights are inseparable. You can't have one without the other. And I don't know why some people are forgetting that. I keep hearing, we have to have it for ethanol or whatever. My issue is eminent domain. They should have spent a little bit more money and got volunteer easements, but they didn't want to do that. They wanted to just try to browbeat and use their money to force landowners into this garbage. And I think now they're paying the price for it. They paid the price for it in South Dakota. And I think ultimately, I'm optimistic, just like Representative Williams said. I think our Iowa Supreme Court, they've already made some rulings recently that show that they disagreed with the new London decision in the U.S. Supreme Court. So I believe our Iowa Supreme Court will do the right thing if it gets to them.
I don't know if I have anything to add. It reminded me, I think you were in the room when we did that first Senate subcommittee some 4 years ago, and I think it was Summit's lobbyist said, we spend millions of dollars on these projects, and if you get the wrong landowner in your way, your pipeline is stopped. Wow. Hubris on full display. Okay.
Can I say one more thing? I was talking about Shelby County should be really proud of itself, because you have been on the cutting edge of the fight on this issue. And the supervisors, the people, this county has really been on the forefront of this fight. So you really have a lot to be proud of the fact that Iowa or Shelby County landowners stood up in this way.
Okay, everyone, so we're down to our last minutes. I have one question up here. And then after that, if there's somebody who has a question on a topic that has not been discussed yet today, please raise your hand and we'll get you the mic.
Hi, I've got a question. I found a second question. I was looking at the Trump governing members together, the in Des Moines. They're talking about Des Moines. It comes to people, I'll teach you how to change your name. Like a 5% like male to female. And after a while, they want to see the drive later, that kind of stuff. I thought it would be illegal to Iowa. You guys were working on it. Refresh my memory. And that's illegal or illegal, if not, I'm working on it. What do you guys going to be doing about it? What can be done? I hope you understand my question. Do you understand my meaning? Okay.
No, thank you for bringing it up again. So it is not illegal to change your name. And And you get, that's part of the point of this bill, is we didn't take away any rights that anyone else doesn't have. I could change my name, you could change your name. So changing name, even if it's feminine or masculine, is up to the individual. That's none of our business. Driver's licenses, on the other hand, we did put language in for Iowa issued licenses that the types of identification that you use, sometimes it's passports, federal, we don't have anything to do with that. We can't affect that. But the birth certificates issued in Iowa are to be, going forward, are to be issued based upon how you were born. Regardless of what you choose to do to yourself as an adult, whether it's name or physical changes, your birth certificate will reflect who you were born, how you were born. But driver's licenses, there's going to be a little bit of leakage through. I don't believe it's going to be very much. But due to federal passports, other accepted forms of identification that we can't change and have to accept, there could be some issues, but we don't expect it to be bad. And we went as far as we believe we can legally defend in making sure that people are who they say they are, because we have the gold star standard to make sure on your driver's licenses. We provided as much structure as we could, but I don't think it'll be a problem going forward.
We had to do the birth certificate issue because if we had not, then changed birth certificate could have been used for biological male and female sports. So that's why we said the birth certificate will be based on biology and birth period. Otherwise, it could have been used in that way. And we're not going to put that in.
I just have one question regarding schools. It's kind of become the norm that schools need to certify their budgets before the SSA number comes out, which hasn't been a huge problem because we kind of know where it's going to land. But if we get into a situation where that gets more fluid, it could be a tougher issue for schools. Do you see any movement on that?
Yeah, let me, you're not in education, right? You're not in education? Okay, so none of us are in education committee. So here's where it's at right now. The Senate and the governor has a 2% SSA in their budget, and the House has a 2.25% SSA plus some other things, some itemized expenditures that would go into that budget. The three are colliding at the moment, and they haven't come to an agreement on which path they're going to go down. So none of the three of us are involved in it. I know you're going to hold us responsible for it. That's okay. But that's where it's at right now, is I think we're at an impasse between the two sides talking about what that budget number should be. I understand that you have to have the budgets done in a timely manner. I think if it were me on that end, I would have to assume that it's going to be 2% and nothing more than that. And that way, if it's more than that, then it's a plus. But I'm sorry, I don't have better news for you than that. I don't know when it's going to come about, but that's where it's at the moment.
The House members wanted to be at 3%. We recognize we're on an island with the Senate and the governor, and so we went to 2.25. We also increased operational sharing numbers. We put in one-time money. We did a lot of things to give extra money, which would amount to a pretty decent increase for our schools. But again, we're kind of in a different place in the Senate and the governor. So we felt it was worthwhile to sort of try to do that, try to get a little bit more for the schools. But as a result of that, we missed that 30-day window, that's our responsibility. But again, we're not the board. We don't think collectively, and the House just has a different position in the Senate and the governor's office, and so that's where we're at. But I would agree with Representative Williams. It's certainly not going to be below 2%. Doubtful if it will be above that, but we're continuing to fight for those issues. So.
All right, folks, well, time-wise, that will bring us to the end of this legislative coffee. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, representatives, for sharing your thoughts. April, we always play, see where we are in the session, is if there's still subject matters that are being discussed, things that are being worked on. So we'll make an announcement here in a couple of weeks whether or not we'll have an April legislative coffee or not.
I will tell you, we started much later this year than normally do, January 13th, so we're not even scheduled to get out till like first part of May.
Yeah.
All right, well then, we will plan on having an April legislative coffee. I wasn't paying
This
that close.
this is our 110-day session.
Okay, so great, so we will have an April legislative coffee and it will be hosted here at the chamber again. Thank you all for coming and have a great rest of your weekend.